watching the flocks. If you can just visualize this with me, you're out in the hills of Bethlehem. The lights of the city are not on. The smog is not there. There's no pollution from fossil fuels. There's no of any of the things that we're talking about today. It's just clear sky. And if you're out there and the sheep are bedded down for the night, imagine what that must have been like. Have any of you ever gone camping? You have, you get out there in the hills, away from the city, away from the distractions, away from the noise, and it's almost like you can hear the voice of God out there. You look up in the heavens, and David wrote some interesting things. Psalm 19. I want to read a piece of this to you. I think this is pretty profound. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. Day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech nor language where their voice is not heard. David laid out there on the hills in Bethlehem, and he was so moved by what he saw that he wrote something so profound that people are confounded by it even to this day. People say, well, what about that area over there that never gets exposed to the gospel? David said, the heavens declare the glory of God. There is absolutely no excuse for anybody to not understand that there is a God that put all of this together. Evolutionists can say what they want. I'll give you an example of something that we learned just a few weeks ago. How did blood clotting evolve? What would have happened before the clotting? Something or someone got cut. They'd have bled to death. So how can we say that clotting evolved? The arguments don't make any sense. The world that we live in declares the glory of God. So David is a warrior. He's moved. He writes some of the most beautiful stuff while he's out there in the hills. The 23rd Psalm, he says, the Lord is my shepherd. And he's going back to his own experiences. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He anoints my head with oil. The feeling that he had was one of just awe and respect. And he was just amazed. Now, Saul was the king of Israel. How did he become king? He was chosen. By whom? By the people. Was that God's plan? No. No, why? God wanted to be the king for Israel, right? The people clamored. They wanted to have a king like the rest of the nations. So, they got a king. And how was he chosen? Head and shoulders above the rest of the people. Be careful when you go to the polls to vote. That might be an indication. Don't vote for the guy that's the tallest of the bunch. Short guys like me are okay. That's too tall. All right, so after a while, Saul wound up losing favor with God. What were the marching orders as the Israelites went into the Promised Land? What were they to do with the inhabitants and the things? Destroy them. Completely. All right, so Saul is given an opportunity to perform on that task. He's supposed to go and do battle with Agag. So he goes out there and he does the thing that he's supposed to do, except that he doesn't complete the task. He brings Agag back, And he brings also all of the best of the sheep, the oxen, and the firstborn of the lambs. He didn't complete the task at all. So Samuel is told by God to go confront Saul. So he does. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul says, "Blessed be thou of the Lord. I have performed the commandment of the Lord." And this is where I think the King James is so cute. Samuel says, "What meaneth then this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen which I hear?" So there was no doubt that there was something amiss. And that was pretty much the final straw in Saul's relationship with God. He had tapped out a long time ago. And Samuel called him on it. And so what does Saul do? Saul does what a lot of us do. Saul blames the people for not destroying the Amalekites. And don't we do that in our own lives? I mean, we hear a lot of that now. If you listen to the news, it doesn't matter whether it's red or blue, what party. They're all blaming each other. Nobody's stepping up and saying, "You know what, I'll take responsibility for that, and I'll fix it. Or I'll do what's supposed to be done." We're all pointing the finger this way. You know, it's somebody else's fault, not mine. I didn't do it. And Saul was like that. And if you can imagine, who's a good relief pitcher in the major leagues? Give me a name.
Mariano Rivera.
Okay. He didn't do so well, but yes, Rivera. He's a relief pitcher. He's the Yankees' ace. Now he comes out on the mound in the bottom of the ninth, and he's got men on second and third, and his team is up by 1 run. And he comes out and he talks to the manager, and he says, "I'll come out and take a stab at this, but I didn't create this mess. This ain't my problem. I had nothing to do with this. But so if I don't succeed, don't hold me accountable." How long do you think he would be an ace reliever? You'd be ordering your sandwich from him at McDonald's. They booed him. So Saul was that way. So he didn't take responsibility, and he didn't do what God asked him to. And so there's a lesson there, and I filled in the blank for you. Partial obedience is disobedience. You look at Jonah. Jonah was told to go. He decided he wanted to do something else, go somewhere else. He didn't feel like he wanted to do that. Saul was told, "Do this." And he did a part of it. I mean, he went out and he destroyed some, but they didn't destroy all. So partial obedience is disobedience. Now, when we look at this, God said, "It repents me that I made Saul king." Now, does that mean that God made a mistake? No, that doesn't mean that at all. God knew what was going to happen. God knew that Saul was not the right choice. It was not God's plan, and that he wasn't going to be successful, ultimately. And that he would try and take things into his own hands to do that. So what that basically shows is the sovereignty of God. God knew what was going to happen. And so this isn't, as some would say, God made a mistake. This is the real deal. God knew, and he was in control. All right, so that having been said, Saul falls out of favor with God. He's still king. God tells Samuel, "I want you to go to Bethlehem and meet with Jesse. Jesse's got some sons, and one of those is the one that I want you to anoint king." So Samuel goes to Jesse's house, and then Jesse parades 7 of his sons by Samuel, none of whom kept mustard. Please forgive the error up there. I thought I had that corrected after my team of editors went through this, but evidently I missed it. And there's one more blunder in here later on that you'll see. But none of the 7 were what God wanted. And so Samuel asks Jesse, do you have any other children, any other sons? And Jesse said, yes, I have one who is out keeping the sheep. And so he sent and brought David in. David was ruddy and of a beautiful countenance and handsome. And the Lord said, arise and anoint him, for this is he. Then Samuel took the horn of oil, anointed him in the midst of his brethren, and the Spirit of the Lord